Tuesday at noon for the Speaking and Presenting to Build Your Business sessions. And next week, Nikki Molnar is going to be here as the presenter, and she's going to be talking specifically about your PowerPoint or your slides as backup. And so you want a real how-to sort of a guide with a lot of tips and tricks on how to avoid some technical snafus when you actually get to your presentation. The Story Slam, you were the MC for the Story Slam last summer, is that right?
And Bainbridge
Bluegrass Festival. And she also came here and did a facilitation when the new city manager came.
what's his name?
What's his name? We got that on tape. I'm blowing it on tape. So anyway, I want to welcome Marianne here. We are recording this session, so
we better stop calling her what's his name.
So thank you all, and I'm going to just stop now while it's way too late, and Marianne's going to take over for me.
And I want to thank Leslie. It is a privilege to be here. I'm really happy we were asked.
She's been lovely enough to host, and I think does a world of good. You really have created a marvelous business, and I bet you haven't told a story. I bet you we can tell that story. The place that people have heard me the most is on any of you listen to KBCS radio? It's the one out sometimes. Is I tell stories twice a week on KBCS radio and other radio stations, and that's the thing that people think I do without realizing that I've spent 20 years as a management consultant. Maybe longer. As a consultant, I told a lot of stories. And sometimes people would say too many stories, but I told a lot of stories. And then I was working with Jennifer James. So any of y'all remember Jennifer, this social anthropologist? And Jennifer was extremely successful on the keynote circuit. But she had no manuals or workbooks or anything, and our company was getting all of her manuals and workbooks together and getting her all organized. And she would get so many speaking engagements she couldn't do them. And I became her golden crumbs. Oh, this is only a $5,000. You want to go do this? For $5,000, I can talk for an hour. This is only $1,500. It's 20 minutes. It's downtown. I'll pay my own parking. And it was fun to work with her, and so I started telling stories and more stories, and the stories became the way of talking to people about moving into the 21st century. And I was creating a lot of stories to do that. And then I got very interested in how to tell your story, or how to tell your story, or why are you coming up with a rhyme with her, and what's the story behind that? And I was moving from that place of just being a person who absorbs stories, because that is my culture. If you ask me after 7 o'clock, you'll really be able to hear where my culture is from. During the day, I try to keep it under control. I'm a Southerner. But lots of cultures tell stories, storytelling cultures. I had the privilege of telling stories in a synagogue one Saturday morning about a story I had written about singing in synagogue. And by the time it came for me, I was terrified. I don't usually get terrified, but I was terrified. I'm sitting in a synagogue. Everybody's been up there as a great storyteller. Here's a whole religion based on stories. How am I going to keep up with Moses? It's all about stories. They were very gracious. I tell the story. But what we're going to do is a little bit about your story, and I'm going to tell you stories, and there are really two kinds of stories, I think. There are stories, they're evocative stories. They use imagery and history and things that we know, metaphors that we're familiar with. And they have an expected outcome. We're using all of our tricks, our manipulations, our seductions. And what we want is a wow. Wow, that was a good story. Or at least you want somebody to be pleasantly entertained, even if you don't get the wow. And then there's stories that you don't know the outcome. You have no idea what somebody's going to come up with, because you're asking questions so they can hear their own story. And as a story strategist, I do that a lot with organizations and with people in organizations. So, I don't know why you're here. I don't even know who you are. That's not culturally correct. Southerners have to know who they are. So would you tell me just really quickly, what is your name and what is your business?
My name is Mickey Moner, and my business is helping people use computers more effectively. But I also work at the Chamber of Commerce, where I help tourists find their way around two big around it.
And what is your interest in story?
I'm following you next week as a presenter, and I wanted to attend all the presentations.
Okay, so you are the Mickey who's going to be doing things in details and specifics, and not me.
Right.
Not. There's never a detail that I can look.
No detail is so big that I cannot. But it's nice to meet you, Mickey. Thank you. Your name?
I'm Marcia, and this is called Moving Well, and I do the Feldenkrais method.
And you do what method?
Feldenkrais, Feldenkrais.
And how are you interested in story? What interests you about story?
Well, I'm submitting an Ignite talk, so I signed up for this whole public presentation thing. I'm not a natural public speaker.
Okay.
You just naturally spoke.
Yeah.
I have several theories. We all have a story, and we all can speak. And no great speech has ever been written on the back of a cocktail napkin. It is an American myth. And you are?
Carrie Klein, Silver Planet.
Now, what are you interested in about story?
To learn a way that works for me to tell a story.
Can I write customized there, which is for me? And I know who you are, but why are you interested in story, Lindsay?
I'm interested in, I want to tell the stories of my members. I have a few stories, in my family that I want to tell. Just in general, it's always been an area that I want to dive into more.
Okay, so some other time we'll do something about personal narrative. We're not going to do that. Too much. Other than we all have them, tell them all the time. And we're going to sort of stay on that kind of evocative story and how you use it in business more than that other kind of story. Your name and your business, sir?
Steve Kirsten, Bainbridge Water Services. And my interest is in learning how to tell my story to my customers and encourage them to use my services.
Okay. Your name, sir?
Hi, Sid Mays,
Hi, Sid Mays.
and my business is Horizon Home Inventory. I record the assets in your home and document that on DVD. And I guess the one main reason I'm interested in is I've known people over the years who could really tell good jokes, and I could never tell a joke, but I could tell a story.
It's because they don't have anything to do with each other. That's like saying you know people who are fabulous airplane pilots and wonderful chefs. They're different things. They're very different things. I don't tell jokes. Jokes are often built on putting somebody else down or putting something else down. And you got to be either really good or have an audience with something to drink to think that's only Mark Twain could do it a different way. Your name, sir?
Hi, Bill Ruddick, and I'm a business consultant. And the biggest challenges that I have are getting people to look at things differently, change their minds, and I think storytelling could be the best way to convey that. So I want to learn how to do it better.
And if Leslie lets me come back and we do that other kind of storytelling where you don't know the answer and you're not looking for the wow, but you're going through the questions, maybe you come back and we do some more work in that area. Hi.
Hello, I'm Tobias Eigen, and I run a nonprofit organization called Cabisa, and I'm currently seeking a career change and looking for also ways to tell my personal story.
Tobias? Am I saying it right?
More like Tobias. To be or not to be, that is the question.
That's a good start.
That was a good joke that didn't hurt anyway.
And that's exactly what he uses as something that's familiar to evoke, in this case, laughter, because it's unexpected, and it's funny. It's good, to be us.
I'm Carol Corbus. My business is Corbus Feldenkrais. Like Marcia, I teach neuromuscular patterning work that I learned from Dr. Feldenkrais directly. And I was taught with stories as well as hands-on techniques. I have 28 years of sort of amazing witness to healing experiences of my clients. And I need to keep generating business. It's all in word of mouth.
And your name is?
Carol.
It's Carol, not Karen. So we have Karen and Carol. All right.
Carol.
And Tobias.
And after Tobias.
I'm another Carol.
Okay.
Born in the 50s.
And what's your business, Karen?
Let's call it organizing for shift. That's not the name of it, but that's what it is.
For shift as in hours of the day or changing your life?
Shifts in general.
Sands. Changing. Hang on. Come on, baby.
My name is Laurel Wilson. My nonprofit business is Art Studio. It's not supposed to be a nonprofit. And I'm not a very good storyteller, so I came to listen to a good story.
And it's Laura or
Laurel, like the tree.
Laura like the tree. And what is your nonprofit?
It's not, that was a joke. It's a graphic design business.
It does what?
It's a design business.
Art, architecture, buildings, handouts, anything like that?
I design visual systems, like planning, refining.
As with details, there's not a visual system that I've ever tripped over in my life. Such a great skill. You know, the word people and the visual people and then, you know, all the intelligences we can. I have zero in some areas, and so I draw little things. Congratulations, it's a wonderful skill to find. It's a wonderful skill. Yes, sir.
David Green, Heron House Productions, graphic design, web design, photography.
David Green, web.
Heron, graphic design, web design.
Another visual wonderful person. Karen.
House, yeah.
I know you all can't read this, but perhaps I can do something.
Shailene Stobelfeld, and I'm a behavior analyst, and I do workshops with parents in schools, and I want to make them more interesting because some of the stuff I talk about can be very dry. So building stories, building stories into it can help.
Shailene?
Shailene, Shailene, and
Are you a behavioral person? Okay. Around or down?
I'm Lisa Garza, and my company is Gluten Free Foodies, and it's a blog or website about living and learning to live the gluten-free lifestyle.
I know who you are.
You do?
You're my friend.
Oh, cool. And I'm trying to share.
Yeah, there's great pictures of gluten-free life.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much.
And Tracy Wickersham.
Oh my goodness. So I want to connect my readers' stories with, and to help everybody engage.
So that they don't just think of the miserable, rotten things there are when you say goodbye to wheat in your bread, and wheat in your pizza, and
Pasta.
wheat in your pasta, and wheat in your crackers, and wheat in your tomato sauce, but they'll be not having things that are growing on their hands, and they might have better luck with their knees and their arthritis.
Their brains work.
And brains
It's
might.
amazing what happens when the brain works.
It's just amazing, this gluten-free thing, which I complained about forever and then had to finally go. All right, I think I'll just have to hush, pay attention to this, maybe even try. Who are you?
I'm Carla Smith. I'm a CPA. I do business accounting for small businesses.
And what do you want with stories?
Well, I find myself in situations where I need to present numbers, and the most recent thing I came up with is that numbers tell a story, and I find that when I can, it's trying to get it into terms that non-financial people can understand.
Think ice cream. Think about ice cream. I was working with a math teacher, and we were creating stories about ice cream so she could work those into her lessons with the kids. All the kids paid attention. Of course, it cost her a small fortune buying them ice cream, but it was fun, and it did work. So yes, a great use of story. And many of you all are coming up with some really neat ways to use story.
Hi, I'm Karen Casey, and Inspired Action is my company, and I think of myself as a social architect.
What's that mean?
So my work is all about story, whatever it is, anyway. I'm a firm believer that in an old saying I heard once, you cannot hate someone whose story you know. It's reciprocal. It's give and take. So my work is conversations, and that's storytelling.
There's a great fairy tale about the dragon who loves stories. And sounds to you now. And the dragon would come to the edge of the village to listen to stories that were being told at night around the fire. But he had to leave real quickly because he was feared. And everybody knew there was a dragon that lived up in the mountain.
He creeped down at night. And it made him very sad that he couldn't go join the circle and listen to the stories, but he knew he couldn't, so he'd go back at night. There's a little boy who got kind of interested in what was living up there because he'd always grown up with that. So dragon, don't ever go up there. Very dangerous dragon. Kill you, dragon. Very bad dragon. And one day the little boy actually went to the mountain. And the dragon saw him and went, oh, what am I going to do? I've got a human being. I've kept all these human beings out of here for so long. I'm going to show him my tricks. And he breathed fire. The little boy got scared, went away. A few days later, the little boy's up that mountain again looking. Dragon's, what am I going to do? He's back. The fire didn't work. So the dragon just sat down and said, please go away. If the people know you're up here, they'll kill me, and they're scared of me, and I don't want to cause any harm. But before you go, would you tell me one of the stories? And the little boy told him one of the popular stories of the village, and got so he'd go back up the mountain. And the dragon could tell stories too, and the little boy would tell the dragon story, the dragon would tell the little boy story. And the little boy wanted the dragon to come into the village. And the dragon was scared and said, they'll kill me, I frighten them. And finally the dragon went, and all the people were getting their rocks and getting ready to throw the rocks. And the little boy talked them into sitting down, listening to the dragon's story. And from then on out, the dragon came down and participated in the story. Because once you know someone's story, it's hard to be afraid of them, and we can talk. So it helps to be constantly reading stories if you want to tell them, so you can always have a story for somebody, and which throws the schedule off immediately. So I blew it. I completely blew it. I want you to hold in mind the LSMFT letters. Does that mean anything to anybody? LSMFT? Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. Anybody remember that? Yeah. Remember? It's a definite generational use of this. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. Okay, LSMFT. And I'm going to come back to that and look at it in terms of laying out a story, looking at a situation, looking at the magic in a story, what makes magic in a story, looking at the flaws, foibles, flummoxes that happen, and the triumphs that happen in a story. So just think about LSMFT for a second. And I'm going to tell you about my colleague, Kevin. Kevin is one of those women with a very large brain. She's a brainiac, and she's got a very large heart, and she's also very down to earth, and she's completely willing to get her hands dirty. In fact, she was an auto mechanic, and even though I don't know that she stands 5'4" tall, she is a licensed 18-wheel overland truck driver and made her living in her own rig. She also consults the heads of states and joint chiefs of staff. Kevin helps people and organizations find the road that they ought to be on, need to be on, could be on. And some years ago, we created a system called Future Quest. And what we were doing was taking Kevin's cybernetic engineering thesis, and she is a cybernetic engineer, and translating that into something like goals and plans to get goals, and doing workshops for leaders in human resources and other kinds of organizations. It was very successful. We did it at City University. It became part of their leadership program, their master's program. And the only problem was that when people left the program, they couldn't do it anymore because it was too complex. I went off to learn more about storytelling and play on the radio and tell stories and work with organizations to tell stories. And Kevin continued her consulting literally to the aerospace elite in the United States. She works with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. She works with people who are in charge of space, what we put in it, how much we spend on it, what little things are flying around that we know about, what little things are falling down that we don't know about, and helping them figure out what needs to happen, what results do they want, how to get them. The only problem is, in these very large and prestigious rooms are people who have stripes on their shoulders, and the more stripes that they have, the more decision-making they have. So she would be wrangling, here's the data, here's the information, here's the objective, and here's the general, and that's what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And it would get very frustrating to somebody who truly just wants people to get to where they need to be. So she would come home at night, and she's married to one of those Cupertino Apple, also equally brainiacs. And every night he would listen to how frustrated she was and how this general did this and this aerospace, and they got all the way here, and then they decided not to fund it because this and that and the other. And everybody was getting frustrated. So finally he said, what is it you want for your clients? What do you want them to do? And she said, I just want to figure out what's driving them. What are the things driving them to get what they want? And how do they get what they want? He said, fine, create wantology. And she did. She created the most beautiful workbooks, workshops, systems, methods to get people to ask questions so they could hear their stories. And some consultants liked it and became licensed in it, and some people used it, but it really wasn't catching on. And the reason it wasn't catching on is it was too simple. The brainiac had gone from one to the other. And so she redesigned it, and she worked on it. And a consultant who was licensed in wantology loved it and thought it was such a great way to work with people. It's exactly what Bill was talking about, how to get people to go through a series so they can see how to change what they need without being defensive about it. Actually, maybe even wanting to. Wantology, oh. And a very prominent consultant was being interviewed by the New York Times on her book. And the prominent person recommended Kevin's Ontology, talked about Ontology. The next day, her phone is ringing off the hook. They're calling from Italy, they're calling from Switzerland, they're calling from New York, they want to interview her. People are clamoring to find out about this overnight 20-year success called Ontology. And she's helping some man make a decision about his career path. He's going to take this promotion, only they figure out if he takes the promotion, he's going to be doing exactly the work he hates, and he will be miserable, and so he does something else. He loves Ontology. The factory in Italy is going to now design X instead of Y. They're deliriously happy. She's redesigning it so it's not too complex, not too simple, and licensing consultants and working with people in Ontology. We all hope that the Joint Chiefs of Staff learned while she was there how this works. Because instead of the multi-million-dollar remote control system they wanted to make, she got them to see that all they needed was a $100,000 landing strip, and they were all happy. And we, the taxpayer, benefited, while she got on her own road, helping other people drive down their own highway. That's Kevin. Who's the hero in the story? And when did you find out about Kevin? When it was laid up. So every story has a layup. And in the layup, we usually find out who the hero is. If you're telling a story, if Mickey's telling a story about her business, you may very well be the hero. It's okay to be the hero in your... If you are not the hero in your own story, you are really unlikely to be the hero in anybody else's story. So, have at it. All right, and then we get to learn a little bit more about what's going on, right? We create Future Quest. And what happens? We create training that's too complex for people to use. Okay, so we get the situation. You learn a little bit more about Kevin, you learn about what kind of work she's doing, and you learn a little bit about what she wants.
Can we ask you? No, I'm not.
Well, you could just jot it down and you can ask me later. So we get a little bit more about the situation. You get a character, name's Kevin, the hero. What does she want? What kind of challenges is she facing? And she comes up with a plan to meet the challenges. She's going to create this thing called Ontology. And then what happens? It's too simple. People don't want to use it. There's a flaw. She's foiled.
So in this kind of cycle, because Future Quest is foiled, and then the swing of the pendulum was foiled.
But that set her on a road. So having that thing that was too complex is how she got into aerospace. So she creates something else. And it's too simple. It's just the opposite. And then she triumphs. She works on it, and through the luck of the way things happen sometimes, someone was gracious enough to tell the New York Times where they got their information. We do not always find this in business. It is a testimony to our humanity, I think. And Kevin is no longer in aerospace.
Yeah.
She's really not. She's really doing Ontology. So, your story needs to have some of these elements. If you are a theater person, you can think of it as Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And lots of people talk about stories like that. Act 1 is the L and the S. We've got to have a character. Character's got to be in motion doing something. Act 2 is where the complexity begins and the flaw. We like flaws because we all have them. And when you're telling the story of your business or telling the story of yourself to get your next job, or talking to a client about what they need to see, you can be flawed and presidential, flawed and knowledgeable, flawed and vulnerable. It brings you closer to the people you're talking with. I told Leslie we're not going to use lovely technology for this hour, because when you go out to talk to somebody, you have that, you can get them to look down. But if you're looking down, you're not looking at me. And if you're not looking at me, I'm not communicating. Even if you're listening. I have been known to get behind people. I have been known to stumble right, unless you're about 12 years old, and if I disconnect you from technology, I know I've lost you. Don't mess with it. But you tell a story, watch what's happening to people. All right, so you have Act 1. You have Act 2. You're foiled. You're at that part of a television show where, dun 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 dun, what's going to happen? You're telling a business story, a strategic story. What's going to happen is a triumph. There are times that you will tell a story about a product that failed or a company that failed, but you're probably doing that so that this client doesn't repeat it. And the triumph will be theirs. And in business stories and strategic storytelling, sometimes the wow that you want is not your own, but your client's. If you get a lot of people who are probably wheat intolerant to choose another diet, that's pretty much a wow for you, I would imagine. And you get to tell their stories. So it's their story that the wow comes from. Okay. So you're always in the, and when you get into the triumph, you're into Act 3, if that's the way you think. I have a colleague whose name is Kevin, really brilliant woman, has always had a hard time because what she comes up with is so complex to get people to do. It's been very frustrating for her in her life. It's so frustrating she even drove a truck for a while. But she married a guy who just pointed out the nose right there on her face, simplified the whole thing, almost made it too simple. Go online, look up Wantology, you'll find it. It's the way I talk. W-A-N, want. What do you want? So, okay, comes with my package, Wantology. And what I just did is the whole story in less than 60 seconds. So the first story I told you is probably about 600 words, 500 words. I just saw on some website, you know, keep your story to 20 minutes. Keep your story to 20 minutes and you are talking to the wall. My Sunday stories on radio are 5 minutes long. My Monday stories I try for 3 minutes because that is what the American ear is used to. And millions of people have done studies on this. 3 minutes. When a musician sends in something to a radio station, songs that are over 3 minutes, not well accepted.
And they go to the video.
Right, then they go, and then you can do whatever you want to. But 3 minutes is extremely hard to do, but you can do it. How do you do this? Write your story. We have these computers. It's going to tell you it's 1,500 words. Edit. It's going to tell you it's 700 words. Keep editing. 600. About it. 600 will get you about a of course you're going to have 650. Of course you're going to go over. And of course, you know, all of a sudden you're going to have to tell the dinosaur story in the middle of everything, which is going to blow your time completely. Yes, it is. But it makes such a good point that we need to know each other's stories. Need to know. Now, I have a feeling from what some of you said that you just don't walk into a room that's been set so nicely like we are here at Expats with chairs and water and coffee, and go ahead, tell your story. You might be doing more brushing into people on elevators. Maybe you're going to talk at Rotary, or I'll never forget Bainbridge Bluegrass last year. Karen Klein walking out there, she's got her stuff. You go, Karen, you go. I'm with you. I'm with you. You're sitting down talking to a client, Bill. You got probably a one-on-one. Water, one-on-one situations, or you give presentations, or one-on-one. A story is a presentation. A strategic story is a story that you're using all of the things you know to get a specific effect for a specific reason. Why did I tell you the story of Kevin? What's her name? Kevin. Why would I tell you that story?
Show structures.
To show a structure. To what else?
To reel us into the story, to reel us into you, into what your points.
Okay.
Need.
It is, let's do both of those. To reel you in. Storytelling is a pull technology if you use the quality language. You pull someone into the story and they engage with you. As a consultant, when I've got you to start telling your story, I'm more likely to have made the sale. When I stop talking and you start talking. When I'm on radio, the phone rings and somebody immediately says, oh, let me tell you what happened to my father, or let me tell you about our Easter, or let me tell you about Passover at my house, or let me tell you about our spring. They don't say, thank you, love the story, kiss my foot, wring your neck. They are right into their story. And at first I was, no wow, not even a second. That was the wow. I had to learn to think of wow in a different way. The wow was the connection. The wow was the connection. Did exactly what Karen said. It reeled them in.
Without asking them a question.
I'm sorry?
Without asking them a question.
Without asking them a question, although you will, in notes that I'm going to give you, because I do believe in visual learning. Anything will work. I often think if you're telling a business story, you want to end with a question. You absolutely want to end with a question. If I was selling it to you, I could end with, is Ontology something you'd be interested in? If I was wanting to hear about your business, I would ask, can you tell me some of the strategic questions in your business? What road is your, what road are you all on? What, that's okay, it's fine. I might yawn myself. It's a compassionate yawn. You can ask, you do ask questions. I heartily recommend in 60 seconds on an elevator that you ask questions. I heartily recommend that you look at the person that you are speaking with as soon as they will let you. And we're not all comfortable looking at each other's eyes. That is an American myth. People sometimes like to look over here. And it's taken me a lifetime to understand that because I am not from that culture. You look somebody in the eye and you shake hands with them, and that's what you do. You're from that culture. Did you have a nice thing?
It used to be from that culture.
So you've got to know the person you're talking with. On some of the notes that are in here is another suggestion. When you're talking about water, Mr. Steve, when you're talking with your clients, can you hear the language that they are using when they're talking with you?
Yes.
If you are comfortable with this, it is really useful to start speaking the language that they speak. And I'm not talking about, Croatian or Russian or Spanish. I'm talking about people will use the words, instead of how they speak, they'll use vernacular. Or I will talk about cybernetics, and they'll one-up me, and we're off into cybernetic. Great, we'll talk about cybernetic engineering. But most people, I will just talk about cybernetics as the study of how to get what you want. Because, did you know about cybernetics? Yeah. I've been reading this woman's thesis for 10 years to figure out what it is she's talking about. All right. Who will venture forth to give me a short story about their business? Yes?
The beach baby turning. It's typically intimate story because it's healthcare.
You want to tell a story about the breech?
I don't know if I want to tell it, but
Okay, let's just talk for a second. Why would you tell a story about the breech baby?
to say the effectiveness of the Feldenkrais method.
Okay, so why are you telling any story? It will keep you on focus. Why are you? I have been standing in audiences of 2,000 people and all of a sudden going, why did you go there? What did you? I was telling you
On Bainbridge Island to a housing conference one time, and I was saying I didn't live in a gated community, and I'm going, I live behind a moat.
I was going to say,
I live on a moat. And I stopped and said, of course I live on a moat that's guarded by a dragon and a ferry boat. And it was okay, but you will find your mouth open. Some of you will have this down to a word for word, and I'm going to encourage you after you write it, don't choke to death please, after you write it and you get it to so many words, you take that piece of paper. Did I read that story to you? How many times have I told that story of Kevin?
Quite a few hundred. In this room.
In life, how many times have I told the story of Kevin?
Hundreds, thousands.
Never. Wrote it yesterday. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Thank you very much. I hope you thought so. But I could never have gone back and told you where the L was, or the S was, or the M, or if I had just made it up. And I'm being really clear about that because I do not want you to go home and think you're supposed to open up your mouth and a story that follows a specific methodology, has a beginning, a middle, and end, a conflict, and a resolution, just pops out. It didn't happen for Stephen King. It's not going to happen very often. I have done it. But I write a lot of stories every week. So write your story and then throw it away. And when you tell it to the mirror, where is the first place that you ought to be telling the story, you're going to hear, well, I can't tell them that because I didn't tell them this, because you forgot. So you go back and you go, okay, got it. And then pretty soon you know, you got to have this piece of information, you got to have that piece of information. And the hardest part about getting this 3-minute or 60-second story together is, what do you think? Taking stuff out. We call them your little darlings, but you can put them somewhere else. What else is really, really hard about this? Leaving it. Believing it. Let me put those two together. Believe that somebody wants to hear it. Believe that. Because if they're in a situation of about to have a breech baby, and you have some way of relieving the stress on that child and that mother and that they want to hear that. Yeah, no, you're telling it to. One of the hardest parts is to get the last line right.
And stop.
Wasn't even going to go there. Yeah, and stop. And you'll start, because you're in a situation where you have limited time.
So we want the last line
I'm saying the hardest part is the last line. You want it right. You'll get it right by doing it wrong some. Storytelling is an imperfect art and the oldest form of communication. Ever seen a bottle that's got a boat in it? You know how they do it? Some of you probably do. Yeah. Okay. So they get all the little parts, and then there's one string in the end that they pull. It makes the whole thing stand up. Your story is very much like that. The last line is the string that makes that boat stand up. You often will not know it until you've figured out the first line. And you often won't know the first line until you've figured out the last line. Whether it's a question or not. Yes, ma'am.
How significant is it that your story's true?
All stories are true. Every story I tell is true. In my mind.
Which brings us to trust.
Well, let me do this two ways. There's a difference between being authentic and being historical. As a storyteller, I am very authentic. I am telling you about us, particularly when I tell family stories and personal narrative. I'm in the 1950s or 40s or whatever, and it's a very authentic period, and those people are probably real people. Did it happen quite like that? No. Was it exactly the right date? Not sure. I'm not a historian. But it's authentic. If I was a historian, I think if you are in the sciences, for all of you who are in the sciences, I hope that information is correct. But there is an old thing about information. I got one mouth. I can put so much food in at one time. I got 2 ears. I can take in so much information at one time. If you walk out of here in 1 hour and you hold on to LSMFT, I will be very happy. It's a real short amount of time. And Leslie said, please, just get one thing that they can work on. So I thought, one thing. We have, speaking of time, would the three of you all be a tripod? Leslie, would you, and Karen, and Carla, let's go with Karen, be a tripod. Would you turn around and work with those two gentlemen? And Bill, would you, and to be and not to be? And Carol, be a tripod. Would you mind coming around this way? So you can sit here. No, I'm going to actually, 4 is too many. Would you sit there and you all can work together? And would the two of you work together? Okay, I want you to think about whatever story it is that you are wanting to tell. If you don't want to tell one, think of one quick, please. Who's the hero? Who's in it? What's the situation? You don't have time to write it. You can write notes if you want to. Give yourself a second to think about it. And then you're going to share it in your small group. Want a hero? Hero needs to want something, need a situation at least. If you get a resolution, that's great too. Yes, you're a dyad. Thank you, sir.
Yes, you will play your vibrator.
I just said, I
Well,
can't.
the only reason I because I have a story in my mind that I told from because we were talking about parents.
Because I use a method that I know will work with other kids, and I want parents to believe in that method.
And you know that works because you got this little boy to speak?
Yes.
Have other people gotten little boys and girls to speak?
Yes, using the same kind of method.
Okay, and how old were the little boy and the little girl?
He was 6.5.
And how long had he not spoken?
6.5 years.
Okay, so do you have 3 little kids who have not spoken for a long period of time?
I have.
In life, do you know that there are 3 kids in the world who's like? Okay, 3 is a magic number.
That's what I do with data too. You have to have 3 data points.
Oh, you got 3 data. It's an old quality thing. Good old Demi. So you need an opening line, but you're probably talking to people who are utterly in heartbreak and divorce has set in and. So, okay. So you may start with my name is and there are other people who, and what we do is really a miracle, and it's an amazing thing that they figured it out. People who have had this situation, children didn't speak, divorce set in, whatever. Magic. What happened? Always? 100% guaranteed? Okay, something. Is it? No? Yeah. And one really neat little triumph at the end. And you, madam, have just told the story. That's your challenge right there, is that initial part.
Because as teenagers, it's an order for those cats. You can't do both. And at some point, when I signed up so then I had to work on a way of changing on the story.
Right, and S is your situation. What's happening? So what's up? That's it. That's your problem. And this is partly the solution. It's magic. But magic, and this is the part of me that believes not only in good storytelling, but in being an honest consultant. It's not real perfect. I mean, life is not perfect. And, for me, I was doing great until Christmas came, and coconut cake came, and that flower came back in my life. And now I'm back at it again. Get it out of here. Get it out of here. And I know because my arthritis hurts, and I get psoriasis. Do you have a really good website? Or Facebook?
Thank you.
Facebook, I guess.
I appreciate that. I didn't realize. But that's very nice to meet you. You remind me of one of my favorite teachers that I had in school.
Okay.
And one of my teachers that literally paid attention to me and I really connected with. And so when I walked in today, I was like, holy cow, that's amazing. I haven't thought of her in forever. So thank you for reminding me of her.
Do you remember who Tracy Wickersham is?
No.
She is on KBCS. She does Women Notes on Wednesday nights from 7 to 9, and I can't remember the first and fourth Wednesday or third. She is a great, she's on your Facebook, and she's a great fan. Are you off? Well, that's because I'm too long. Call me or email me, and I will talk more about what you do.
Well, I have gotten buckets load from what you told me already. I appreciate it.
Come on, Di. Thank you very much.
So, okay, so.
Well, I'm a theater major, so all you got to do is come out with Shakespeare, and I'm going to. But I also, Tobias is a sweet story. It's a great story.
It was a story about, anyway. We found too that I noticed when you took everybody's name, you were getting a sense of the audience, who they were, how they might respond to different stories. You told the story and you had trouble getting what the drill. And then I was picking it up, so it all depends on what your audience.
It's all totally different. It was how quickly could I, and I was going, I only have an hour. But if I don't have some idea of vernacular, and you're a consultant, so you know exactly what I'm
I worked with the Japanese. I learned all the Japanese history and stories, and would use that. It's like the gentleman on the beat. They go,
Right. If you tell people about what's been stolen out of my house without any pictures taken of it, if you tell people that, without your service they could be crying.
True, I agree.
Or you could just tell the positive of getting it back. Or, I know you've got a bajillion great stories.
Yeah,
Are you getting some help with your story? Are you getting help with your story?
I don't know. Well, we kind of see things a little bit differently here in that...
what are you trying to sell?
No, I want to listen to him for a minute.
Okay.
Well, I just started this business, and I'm trying to, at least I was told, I had such a compelling story that seemed essential into telling what I do now. And that made sense, and I'm trying to put this together, and every time I do it, it's like, I don't want to sound too depressing.
That's what I said, though. So why would you say that we're coming from different places?
Well,
I said that.
here's the difference, is that you're at a space where you feel the necessity to tell that background. And I've kind of recently, in the last few days, decided I think I'm not going to go there.
Okay.
That's kind of how we...
So then we write it out and crumble it up. So you wrote it out, and you didn't just crumble it, you burned it.
That's fine. This is actually, given my genius of art of design, is not accurate, but your layup is very short. It's very short. And your situation, which is now, is taking up the most part of your story, whether it's 60 seconds or 5 minutes. Too much backstory, well, this is going to get longer and longer and longer, and you don't want it to.
That's what I'm concluding, is that the situation is too much.
Yeah, so winnow it down.
So when I winnow mine down, then people don't get it.
Can you stay for a few minutes and I'll work?
I winnow it way down, but...
Can you stay for another?
Steve kept asking me questions.
Can you stay for another few minutes after?
Well, I guess so.
If you'd like help.
Well, sure. It's just he asked me some amazing questions, and he needed to extract information. So, can I ask you to get information?
Oh yes, that made it very clear.
So did that help you to figure out what you need to do?
But what I need to do is the opposite of what you said to do. See, what I need to do is to not winnow it way down, but to add more. So I have to do opposite of what you said. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that I think at this point in the juncture, I have to make it longer.
I don't think so, because the fact that he has questions is exactly where you want to be.
If you get somebody asking you questions, you are engaging them.
It happens all the time. Because I started out telling my story by not telling it at all, by just talking about the business side of it. People said, you know what, I'm not getting it here. I'm going to call someone who's much cheaper than you and doesn't have all those college degrees. And so then when I start talking, well, I have many, but anyways, when I start talking about why I'm doing this, it's like, you're kidding.
Why are you doing this?
Because I'm a cancer survivor. I should be dead. The first surgeon screwed up, didn't tell me, sent me to the second team over at UW.
So what's your opening line?
It's about 1 in 5 when I dumped out of software. But I tie the layout. I tie the layout with the cancer thing.
That's good.
Because the cancer thing brought it on.
That's going to get it going.
Okay.
I would, if you would like to call or whatever, I would be happy to.
Yeah, because I feel like I have to go against what you say, and that feels odd to me. You're the pro, not me. I'm alive though, so I'm.
There is no rule that there's not an exception.
But you know what? I've been an exception my whole life, and I'm sick of it. I want to find.
Except for the part that you're alive.
I'm alive. I'm alive because
so that's a good thing to be an exception. And I think I know for a fact if you get too much backstory too early on, you will ultimately lose people. It might work once or it might work twice.
They do this.
Yeah, they will do that.
Yeah.
So how you do this is a very customized thing, which is what I'm going to end this with. And you probably would like me to end this, right? Yes. Oh, yeah, I thought you would. Did you all get a story? Everybody got a story? Thank you. Do you all have many stories? Irish stories and otherwise? So hopefully you have a story. If you'll stay a few minutes, I will answer your question. Hopefully you have a story. Hopefully you have the beginning of the story. If you are madly interested in learning more about stories, I gave you some links to go to. There's always stuff at Auntmama.com about stories. And I gave you other people's, including a study on how the brain is affected by stories. People make decisions around business and buying things. It's not always an analytical process. Sometimes it transverses the brain in different ways. That's the path of the story. Stories are about your heart, so put yours in it. And let's stand because my fanny's tired. LSMFT. And thank you very much for coming to Expats, and I appreciate it.